When angels announced the birth of Jesus, they called it good news of great joy for all people. But we're living in a culture of fake news, great anxiety, and a divisive people. So how do we talk about good news? How do we communicate good news to actually sound like good news in our time and culture? On this episode of Word Made Digital Tutorials, myself and my friend Danielle Strickland are going to tell you how. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Word Made Digital Tutorials. I'm your host, Joanna la Fleur, and on this tutorial, we bring them to you week after week, but on this tutorial, I'm inviting my friend Danielle Strickland, who's an author, speaker, social justice advocate, and an amazing storyteller, an amazing and powerful ability to communicate good news and make it actually sound like good news. You know, in our anxious culture, divisive culture, where it's hard to even know what is true and what is real, where we are post-truth or in fake news, how do we share good news? On this episode, we're going to get really practical with you about that, and we want to help you communicate not just good news, but that Jesus is the best news in the world. So thank you so much to the sponsors and partners who are making this possible. Thanks so much to Compassion Canada. Here in Canada and here in North America and around the world, they serve through the local church to meet the needs of children. There's huge need right now with COVID-19, of course, so we'd love you to get involved in that. Of course, thank you also to our partners at the Canadian Centre for Christian Charities, who are partnering with you, the local church in Canada, local charities in Canada, as members to resource you with the tools you need to do the work that you do as a leader. Okay, let's dive into my communication tips, how to make good news actually sound like good news of great joy for all the people. Number one, don't tell it like it's 1955. If we want to tell good news to people in 2020 and 2021, we want to talk to them like the time that we're actually in. You know, in the time of maybe our grandparents, or when we think of the great evangelical crusades of a Billy Graham type of character, it was all about the focus of people's lives were all about how to be a good person. And so the approach in the 1955 way of talking about Jesus would be to address how they felt like they weren't a good person. You would address a sin issue. You would address how they just felt like no matter how they did all these good things, they just never measured up to being a good, truly good person. And that worked in 1955. But if you were to tell people today that they weren't a good person, that would be offensive and really just like an unhelpful way to start the conversation. We want to talk to people in 2020 and 2021 more about identity and more about how to live a free life, what it means to truly be free. I mean, in our culture today, of course, it is so wrapped up in identity. We can be anything we want to be. We can change our identity. We can declare an identity and then become that thing. But the burden of that is so huge, because when you name your own identity, you then have to actually measure up to that thing. You have to achieve it all the time. But the way we can approach and communicate good news in 2021 is that, as Tim Keller says, the message of Jesus is Christianity is the only identity that is received rather than achieved. This is the kind of identity we don't need to work for, that Jesus gives us an identity as a son or a daughter of God who is loved, deeply loved now and forever, no matter what we do. This is the kind of truth that people in 2021 will be encouraged by, not talking at their sin issue that they're not a good person, but we can address that later, I suppose. But we want to come at the conversation identifying the felt need of today, which is a search for identity and meaning and deep purpose in life. Number two is I want you to practice. One of the best ways we can give good news to people is if we've actually prepared in advance the words that we wanted to say. I mean, sometimes we think that if we're off the cuff and unprepared, it sounds somewhat more real or genuine, but actually in some ways it can come across as a little bit untrustworthy, like we don't really know what we're talking about. So I encourage you to practice. Maybe you want to practice with a friend and do some, role play around how you might answer or describe your own faith story or an answer to why you follow Jesus or why he is good news. Or maybe you want to just record yourself, record into the voice memo on your phone, or into film yourself on the camera on your phone and hear it back, play it back to yourself and see what you sound like when you share it. Does it sound like good news? If not, maybe try again. Maybe practice it a few times. If you practice it regularly, when the opportunities come to share good news, you will be less nervous and more genuine because you already have thought deeply through your reasons for why Jesus is good news. Okay, number 3 is I want to pass you over to my friend Danielle Strickland. As I said, author, speaker, communicator, just a wise woman who's able to so clearly communicate story and good news. Danielle Strickland, my friend, expert communicator, this is what you do for a living. So can you tell us some things you do to make good news sound like good news and communicate the gospel in a compelling way? What would you say to church leaders that are listening?
Okay, a couple things. This is what I do for a life, not just a living. Are you kidding? I'd be doing this regardless of what's going on. But here's the deal. I would say that good news has to be authentic. I know that kind of sounds like a no-brainer, but it has to be real. In other words, it's not like something that you're selling, it's something that you're living. So the real good news is authentic in your own life. And how it becomes authentic is when it resonates with felt need. Okay, so good news, like there's tons of good news out there. You know, like I hear that there's like incredible resorts that you can buy, but like nobody can go get there or have the money to. So good news has to be connected to the felt need. Like what is it that people are feeling and experiencing that the good news is actually good news for? So I bring you good news of great tidings for peace on earth, for example. So if you're a person who is living in an occupied territory and all you've known is violence and fear, then peace is good news. Right. And so I would say this is true no matter what the circumstances are. What makes this tricky is that you've got to have your hand on the pulse of like, where are those points in people's lives? Where are those tension points? And how does the good news actually fit those tension points in an authentic, real way?
So getting really practical for leaders, what are some things you would do in preparation or right before you speak to be ready to communicate that well?
Okay, so I have one question that dominates everything when I'm preparing to speak or I'm about to communicate good news. And it's this: how do I serve well here? How do I serve well here? Just deeply connected to a question that Bruxy told me he does before he preaches to anybody. He just stands on the stage and he takes a minute to take a deep breath to kind of hold the space that he's in. And he has a look over the audience and he says, I really love them. I really love them. And he says, because you communicate differently to people that you love. And it's true, isn't it? So this is a little harder in these days because we're all recording to like a camera in the corner of our office, or like if you're lucky, or to a phone or a computer near you. So it makes it really hard. That connection, which I think is key to really authentic communication, is really hard because there literally is not one present at the time that you're communicating. So I think this is even more important to do with your heart posture and your spirit, is to prepare yourself to mentally think through the people who you know are going to be watching this and those that you don't even know. But you can take sort of a mental look at your audience and just love them. Just love them. And then this question should dominate every communicator's mind, which is, how is what I'm going to say serve these people? How is what I'm going to say serving these people right now? And I think that gets us out of sort of the abstract communication idea of just like big theological truths and gets us to like a real sort of pastoral, loving approach. How is what this news is and what this translated into real service? How is this going to help people?
Okay, last question, because it's Christmas and you have this amazing ability of taking, I've seen you do it in rooms, taking a story that seems kind of okay or normal or, you know, interesting, and you have this ability to switch it into something memorable, mesmerizing, inspiring, emotional. Tell us a little bit about the dragon at Christmas. This is the bonus I want from you.
Okay. Yeah. Well, there's going to be a 3-part Christmas series, so you're going to be able to hear all about it later for those of you who want to, as you wish. But basically, the Revelation 12 is what I call the cosmic Christmas story. This is like Christmas from a cosmic perspective, from like looking down. And it's about a dragon and a woman giving birth and the earth opening up and swallowing floods of water. And like, it's this like epic battle. So I remember sitting down with my kids before Christmas last year, and my two little guys are like, they were 7 and 10. And I said, before we go to bed, let's just read the Christmas story one more time. And they were like, oh, like we heard this, we were donkeys and wise men. I mean, we've got it. And I said, no, just one more time. And I opened up Revelation 12 and began to read to them about this dragon that can't wait to consume this baby that's being born and consume the woman, and like seething with hatred, and like the earth opening up. And my kids were just like wide-eyed, and they were like, why isn't this in every Christmas pageant ever? This is the coolest story. And so I think, again, it's just a good reminder that there are different ways of telling a story and different angles to tell a story and different touch points. Like my kids have a lot more in common with sort of cosmic adventures of dragons than they do with wise men and donkeys from the Middle East. So it's just like, how can we tell stories in a way that honors where people are and what might resonate with them and might help them rethink what the good news looks like in their everyday life?
Thanks so much, Danielle. It was great to just talk to her a few minutes ago here at my desk. And things that she talked about were the idea of making it real, actually living it out. She talked about how we need to resonate with what's going on with a person, find the tension point or the felt need in their life and speak to that. And she also talked about ultimately that we need to love and serve them. Now, a bonus from Danielle, of course, is she's an amazing storyteller, and she points out that there's ways we can tell the story, like coming at the Christmas story about a dragon. It's an amazing way to come at a story people might already know or already think that they know. The last point I want to leave you with is, again, she referenced from Pastor Bruxy Cavey. He's from the Meeting House, this multi-site church here in Canada. And Bruxy has this wise thing that I've adapted into my own communication. And he says, make sure you sound like the fruit of the Spirit. What is the fruit of the Spirit? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Does your communication sound like that? I mean, we're in a divisive time. We're in an angry time. We're in a, bots on the internet harassing us with what we post kind of time. And do you, as a follower of Jesus, when you communicate, do you sound like the fruit of your life is the Holy Spirit? Or the fruit of your life is anger and divisiveness and destruction and hatred? Of course, as Christians who are sharing good news, if we want it to sound like good news, it should sound like the fruit of the Spirit. So that's a great check and a filter for every time you go in front of people, whether that's hanging out with a friend over coffee, or that's over a video message, a live stream, if that's preaching a whole sermon, whatever it may be. Every piece of content that you put out, every video you film as a church, every email that you send, does it sniff test smell like the fruit of the Spirit? All right, may you go out and share not just the good news, but the best news in the world at Christmas time and all year long. We'll see you back here next week with another Word Made Digital tutorial. Thank you so much to the sponsors who are making this video possible. Compassion Canada, or wherever you may be in the world from watching this, Compassion has an opportunity for you to give gifts of compassion to people in your life that also impact the lives of people around the world. Maybe you want to give some chickens, you want to give some school supplies, you want to rally together as a family and build a well, whatever it may be. There's a way that you can do that at compassion.ca/gifts. We'd love for you to see what you could do this Christmas season, or really any time of the year that you need to give a gift. What would it look like for people who already have so much stuff, for you to give a gift on their behalf to someone who needs it more than them? Thank you, the Canadian Centre for Christian Charities, also for making these videos possible to you week after week. They support charities and churches just like yours across Canada. They have 3,300 members, and they're supporting with things like tax help, finances, board governance, HR, and legal issues. Basically, they come alongside with all kinds of tools and operational supports that you may not already have or be able to afford to have on your own staff. They free you up to do what you need to do to serve in your ministry. So check out what membership is all about at the link below. Thanks so much for watching this Word Made digital tutorial. We want to support you in sharing the best news in the world. So check out the other tutorials. We've got podcasts. We've got all kinds of content on here that we would love to support you with, encourage you with, inspire you with, and resources you with so that you can tell the best news in the world.